And now onto our dinosaur of the day, Limusaurus, which was a request from Crow via our Patreon and Discord. So thanks. It was a Ceratosaurian theropod that lived in the Late Jurassic in what is now China in the Shishugou Formation. Ceratosaurs, they're famous for being large predators, if you think Carnotaurus or Majungasaurus. But not all Ceratosaurs were large predators, or even known for that, like Limusaurus, because Limusaurus is famous for the strange way that its mouth changed as it grew up.
Mm-hmm.
And Limusaurus was small and slender. The holotype's estimated to be about 1.7 meters or 5.7 feet long and weigh 15 kilograms or 33 pounds.
That is a far cry from Carnotaurus.
Yes. Although there is one specimen of Limusaurus that's 15% larger than the holotype.
Oh, pushing 40 pounds almost.
Now, Limusaurus looked similar to Cretaceous ornithomimid theropods, as well as Triassic non-dinosaurian shuvosaurids. So there seems to be some convergent evolution happening there. They're unrelated, but doing similar things.
Evolving to look similarly.
Yeah. Limusaurus had a long neck and legs, but short arms. It was probably a fast runner. Its arms were not used for any predatory purposes. It had 4 fingers on its hands, though the first finger was reduced. It was smaller. It was more like a vestigial finger.
So possibly its descendants might have lost that finger entirely.
It also had short, stout claw bones, a small head with large eyes, and a relatively tall, short skull, as well as long neck vertebrae, a large ridge at the front of the shoulder blade, and a reduced hallux, or a small first toe. It also had a wishbone. There's no direct evidence that Limusaurus had feathers, so we don't know that about it. But Limusaurus is one of the earliest known ceratosaurs and the first definite ceratosaur known from Asia. The type and only species is Limusaurus inextricabilis. The fossils were found between 2001 and 2006. It was found in 3 bone beds, and then Limusaurus was described in 2009 by Xu and others. And the genus name Limusaurus means mud lizard. The species name, inextricabilis, means, quote, impossible to extricate, end quote, and it refers to the specimens dying after being stuck in the mud.
Oh, okay. I was thinking that it was inexplicable, like hard to explain this weird animal, but that is a different word. Inextricable.
Yes.
For getting stuck really bad.
I suppose it is a little bit hard to explain, but it took a while to figure out that all the specimens in the bone bed were part of a growth series instead of being different, because they look so different.
Gotcha. So they didn't know how weird it was at
Yes.
first.
The holotype's a subadult. It's almost complete and articulated, so it's only missing some of its tail bones. Then the second specimen described was a large juvenile, though it's missing the front.
The front.
Now, since those 2 specimens were described, now 19 specimens have been described in total. Again, that was after a study in 2017 by Shuo and others. They analyzed them and found that they represent 6 different growth stages. So many of these individuals were found together. It's possible that Limusaurus lived in groups. It seems that they got stuck in mud pits. This is not my favorite part of the story. Made by giant sauropod footprints.
Oh, really?
Yeah. These mud pits have been called dinosaur death pits.
So basically the sauropods were walking and making these giant mud messes.
They were just minding their own business, being sauropods, and Limusaurus got wrapped up. Wrong place, wrong time.
I'm imagining the equivalent of an off-roading vehicle just spinning its tires and just decimating the vegetation and just churning it into this muddy, sloppy mess. And then Limusaurus, or a group of friendly Limusaurus come wandering along, and then they all just get stuck in this big, chaotic mess left by that inconsiderate sauropod.
No, the sauropod was just walking. It happened that the mud was probably soft. That was the problem. And then when the sauropod walked, the footprints would get backfilled with thick mud, and it would have been hard to see. Nobody did anything wrong on purpose.
Okay.
But yeah, the mud pits are mostly Limusaurus. Guanlong was also found in them, as well as crocodiliforms, mammals. a turtle, and a cynodont.
Once again, sauropods killing turtles.
It was an accident. Anyway, it seems that the dinosaurs accumulated over an extended period of time. Less than a year, though, based on the climate having seasons and then the sediments in all three pits being similar. So sometime throughout a year. And based on many of these specimens being complete and articulate, they were probably buried quickly. Though there are some isolated body parts, so maybe those individuals were exposed for longer. Most of the Limusaurus individuals were on their sides, and in two of the pits, some skeletons were on top of each other. And many of them had flexed hind limbs, so they probably died in a resting pose. At least they were resting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks to the sauropod, we have this amazing growth series, and we found out how weird Limusaurus is.
Very true. Thanks, sauropod.
Silver linings, all worked out.
Killing all those Limusaurus for us.
They didn't mean it.
That is always the thing with dinosaur fossils, because in order for an animal to fossilize, it has to die.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always a little bit of a silver lining. But they would have died eventually. They weren't going to live 170 million years or whatever to be around today.
See? Worked out. So like I said, there was that 2017 study where they found the 19 specimens of Limusaurus represented 6 growth stages. There were 6 juveniles that were 1 year old or younger, and 10 subadults that were between 2 and 6 years old, and then 1 adult, so over 6 years old.
That's handy.
Yeah, so that shows that Limusaurus changed a lot as it grew up. Specifically, they found 78 anatomical changes as Limusaurus grew up.
That's cool. And it also tells me, if you're hypothesizing about maybe these animals live together, that would be not just a cohort of one age, because you've got multiple different ages potentially all living together in a much larger and possibly more complex structure than just individuals of the same age hanging out.
Yeah, because they would have eaten different things.
Although we should always caveat, just because they fossilized together doesn't mean they live together. It doesn't even necessarily mean that they died together, because like you said, it was over the span of possibly up to a year.
It could be that maybe a smaller group of them happened upon that mud pit together, but yeah, we don't know the timeline.
When there's 19 together, though, I think the simplest explanation is that at least some of them live together.
So some of the changes include the head becoming more shallow, the middle hand bones getting longer, the tips of the lower jaws getting more downturned. And then, of course, the biggest one is that the juveniles had teeth, but the adults had no teeth and instead had a beak.
So weird. I mean, I guess as humans, we're used to losing teeth as we get older.
But we replace the teeth. Oh, I guess after the second set, you don't replace them.
Yeah, once you get much older. But these are like 6-year-olds or whatever that have replaced their teeth with a beak.
Yes.
Really unusual.
It's a big change. And this change to being toothless probably means that its diet changed from being an omnivore to being an herbivore. The juveniles had 9 teeth on each side of the upper jaw and 12 teeth on each side of the lower jaw. They had actually at least 42 teeth. And then at the next stage in their growth, they had at least 34 teeth. So it went way down. And then there were no teeth in individuals over 1 year old.
Oh, so they lost them pretty fast.
Yeah, it seems that way. And then they became skeletally mature at 6 years old. Talk about growing up fast. The CT scans found only 5 empty tooth sockets in the adult's upper jaw, and then all the sockets in the lower jaw were fused and the rest of the tooth sockets were gone. Weird to think about.
So the fact that those tooth sockets are missing means it's not just we found a bunch of dinosaurs that happen to not have the teeth in the jaw. Like the jaw had remodeled to a point where there were not going to be teeth there.
Yeah.
So they're not just missing from that fossil.
Had no reason to have teeth. No need for those teeth anymore.
And no place for them.
No place. And adult Limusaurus have been found with gastroliths. And the older adults had more and larger gastroliths compared to the younger adults.
Oh, I see. So that's sort of the evidence for maybe them switching to herbivorous.
So maybe it was too large as an adult to eat insects, and it probably ate plants once it was an adult. A study of the isotopes found a wider range in the smaller, younger individuals compared to the older individuals, which were similar to plant eaters. So that gives the impression that It was omnivorous when it was young and then became herbivorous as it was older.
Yeah, because different food has different chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you can find isotope markers of the food in the bones. So those younger ones have more markers from more types of food potentially than the adults.
Yes. Now, we don't know of that many animals that completely lose their teeth as they grow up, but there are some, like the armored catfish and the platypus.
Of course, the platypus.
Shifty gears a little bit. Limusaurus helps with the hypothesis that tetanuran theropods went from having 5 fingers to 3 by losing their first and 5th fingers. And Limusaurus technically had 4 fingers again, but really there were only 3 functional fingers.
Oh, I see. So that's that transition. Like you said, the vestigial finger is still just barely there.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like I was saying, how the descendants might have only had 3. That's exactly what we're thinking in terms of later dinosaurs.
There's a few hypotheses on how theropods ended up with only 3 fingers on each hand. One is that only the 3 middle fingers, so the second, third, and fourth one, developed. Another hypothesis is the frame shift one, where the first finger just fails to grow, and then that ends up shifting fingers 1, 2, and 3 over to the positions of fingers 2, 3, and 4. Then there's the thumbs down hypothesis, where the frame shift happened after the first and fourth fingers shrunk. And then there's the lateral shift hypothesis, which is a frame shift from 4 fingers with a reduced or a short first and fourth fingers to where the first finger disappears, the fourth finger develops into a full finger, and then fingers 2, 3, and 4 now look like what used to be the first, second, and third fingers. But a study in 2018 found that this finger reducing or shrinking independently occurred in Limusaurus. And it found that after the fourth finger was lost, there was a shift.
Interesting.
Anyway, Limusaurus lived in a forested area with streams, wetlands, and shallow lakes that had warm, wet summers and dry winters. Other dinosaurs that lived around the same time and place include theropods, like Guanlong, the sauropod Majungasaurus, and ornithischians such as Inlong. And other animals that lived around the same time and place include mammals, crocodiliforms, cynodonts, and turtles. For those of you who listen to our Dinosaur of the Day segment and you like it, please consider becoming a patron. We take new Dinosaur of the Day requests from our patrons and offer a bunch of other perks as well. So check out our page at patreon.com/iknowdino or click the link on the left.